Perfect. All
All
right.
right.
Tara Healy, let's do it.
Great.
So greetings, everyone. Welcome to Living Well's Peak Mind series, brought to you by Point 32 Health. So I'm John Roberts. I'm the operations manager for mindfulness-based learning at Point 32 Health. I am thrilled to be joined by my colleague, Tara Healy, who is the founder and director of Point 32 Health's mindfulness program, which we call Mind the Moment. Good afternoon, Tara. How are you?
Good afternoon, John. I am very well, and I'm absolutely delighted to be here.
Great. So in this series, we will have two main purposes. Now, the first purpose is to show you how you can develop a peak mind by doing 12-minute attention training exercises once per day, most days of the week for about 4 weeks. Now, in this, we have been inspired by the work of Dr. Amishi Jha. Amishi, if you don't know, is a neuroscientist whose research lab studies the science of attention. She's also the author of the recent book, Peak Mind. And Amishi's research has demonstrated that doing 12-minute attention training exercises once per day, most days of the week for about 4 weeks, can help one develop a mind which is optimized for focus and attention, even in high stress, high demand periods. A mind which is less prone to making errors, less prone to becoming distracted, and which is able to take in new information as that information is presented, and among other things which we'll be talking about in this series. Now, let me pause there. Tara, I'd love to turn it over to you to say just a few words about yourself and about the Mind of the Moment program that you created.
Yes. I started this program back in 2005, and organizationally, we were going through a challenging time, and I worked in HR as an organizational development consultant, and I felt like a way to support staff through challenges. Well, one way at least would be to bring in a secular mindfulness class. And so I did. In 2005, we ran a 6-week class and started with about 12 or 14 people across, different parts of the organization, different levels within the company. And it wound up going viral and gave me the opportunity to do this work that I absolutely love. So every quarter I would offer one of these 6-week intros to mindfulness, and it was all word of mouth. But what was also happening kind of simultaneous to this is there was a lot of neuroscience research going on, and there actually had been since 1980. But it really started to pick up and peak around 2006, 2007, 2008. And a lot of that work was being published. So it was sort of, in a way, I think that we had the right conditions came together to support a mindfulness program in a business setting. So, this little idea in 2005, quite honestly, could have never imagined that it would have grown. But I thank the neuroscientist, Dr. Amishi Jha, among them, for helping to legitimize this practice that is ancient. I mean, there's nothing new about it. But we have some good research that talks about the benefits of this practice. For us, for the brain, for the mind, for the body.
Well, Tara, I'm glad you mentioned Amishi, because I think Amishi is like one in a long line of partners we've had.
Yes,
you can see here Tara at Judd Brewer's lab. Judd is the director of research at the Brown University Mindfulness Center. Here with George Mumford, who was the mindfulness coach for the Chicago Bulls and the LA Lakers, with Dan Harris. And we've also been lucky enough to do some work at the corporate offices of HBO. Okay, well, great. So let me take a few minutes and just talk about what I think about as the stakes of what we're doing today. So, I mean, well, first of all, so Tara was talking about our mindfulness program. You might be wondering why people who are associated with the mindfulness program are in fact so excited about Amishi's work. And the reason we are so excited is because 10 years of research coming out of Amishi's lab has demonstrated that the most effective way to train your attention is through doing mindfulness or meditation exercises with those measurable results occurring in as little as 4 weeks if one practices those meditative exercises for about 12 minutes a day on most days of the week. And so the headline then is that we are able to train our brains to be more attentive, but it is the case that that training requires some deal of practice. So Lieutenant General Walter Pyatt, who is somebody that Amishi has done, partnered with to create an attention training protocol for the US military, Pyatt describes meditative exercises as being like push-ups for the mind. And just as you can't develop upper body strength by reading about it or by listening to somebody talk about it, you actually need to practice these attention training exercises in order to feel their effects. Now, fortunately, that is the very purpose of this 4-week Peak Mind Challenge that we created. It's a way to present folks with a method to get a little closer to developing that effective attention training regimen of their own that you can then carry forward into your life. So even if you know a bit about mindfulness practice, you might be wondering what the importance of attention is. I mean, you may have heard about mindfulness as helping one manage stress or reduce anxiety or develop good habits around sleep or eating, but what is the deal with attention? So let me present as Exhibit A here a evocatively titled study. It was called A Wandering Mind is an Unhappy Mind. It was put together by 2 Harvard psychologists, Matthew Killingsworth and Daniel Gilbert. And what they discovered was that our attention is wandering about 46.9% of the time. In other words, during almost half of your waking hours, you are not paying attention to what is happening in front of your face. And the research suggests that when you are not paying attention, you become more prone to making errors, to falling back on habits and tendencies, even prejudices, and to not being able to take in effectively information as it's presented to you. And if you want to make things a little bit worse, it's the fact that stress degrades our attention even more. So our attention, which is already so prone to distraction, almost 50% of the time, remember, becomes even more prone to distraction in times of stress. So this might be a good moment to pause and wonder, like, why are these wonderful brains of ours that we've evolved, why are they in fact so prone to becoming distracted? And I think what's important to point out is that if you are getting distracted more often than you might want to, it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you or your brain. There's a theory that suggests that at an earlier point in human history, there was probably a distinct evolutionary advantage in not becoming so immersed in your task that you don't notice a predator stalking you nearby. As Amishi writes in her book, distractibility served us when there were predators lurking around every corner. If you became too absorbed in a task to notice a predator stalking you, that was pretty much it. So having minds built for distraction certainly made some sense, at least when there were hungry animals surrounding us in our environment. But in those environments, humans were also afforded downtime between those moments of threat and stress. Now, skip ahead to the modern world where threats tend to be much more abstract and not so easy to resolve. More abstract than a tiger sneaking up behind you. With something, for example, like a pandemic, it's difficult to tell that the danger has passed simply because you've outrun it. It can become impossible to gauge how close the danger is at any given moment, how much danger is actually posing to you personally, when it's going to pass, if it's going to pass, which ultimately has this effect of pulling us into a hyper-vigilant mode that makes it impossible to focus deeply on anything. Another way to put this is that the operating system of the brain has not been updated quite as quickly as the environment around us has changed. So it would be fantastic if what we were going to be doing in this series, in our Peak Mind Challenge, if that was to teach you how to remove stress from your life. That's something we're not capable of doing. The world, life, it's a stressful thing. The world is a stressful place. It demands a lot of us mere humans. But what we are training ourselves to do then is to notice where our attention is in any given moment so that we can see, is our attention getting away from us? And if it is getting away from us, we can catch it before it gets away from us too much, reel it back in. And what that then does is it sets us up to be as attentive as we can be in that moment, so that we become poised to make the decision or to do the action that's best going to serve us in that moment and serve those around us. And so that is exactly what we're talking about when we talk about having a peak mind. It's like an early warning system that has been placed inside of our brain that just lets us know when it's time to recalibrate our attention. And it therefore, has the effect of protecting and optimizing our attention in those high stress, high demand periods, therefore making us less prone to making errors, less prone to becoming distracted, to relying on habits that might be based on outdated information. And it makes us more able to take in new information as it's presented to us, so that we can make decisions that are wise, that are creative, and that we can do so with confidence. So let's get started. So in this series, we're going to be examining 4 foundational practices, which Amishi describes in her book, Peak Mind. And the first one, which we'll be looking at today, is called Find Your Flashlight. Now, Tara is going to lead us in this practice. But Tara, before you do so, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the importance of this practice to developing a peak mind from your experiences having taught it for the past 20 years.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, and John, thank you for that. I just have to say, I especially love the picture of the lab on top of the guy doing push-ups. That only a lab would stay there. So the flashlight, essentially, that is where we are, much like you use a flashlight where you narrow in on a particular thing to highlight it. What we're doing in the flashlight meditation is that we are honing in on a particular, it could be a sound, or it could be a body sensation like the breath, noticing when you breathe in and breathe out, where that sensation is most pronounced. And the idea and the value of this is that we are doing this over and over again. So the mind is busy. We're not trying to stop thought. In a way, it's kind of a relief that we don't have to try to like fight with the mind, because the narrative in the mind is going to be going. The idea is that as soon as we see that we've engaged a story, a memory, we're planning or regretting, that is a perfect moment. We're simply going, thinking, and you can be more specific, like planning or whatever is going on in the mind. Soften the body and then return your attention to that highlighted area. So using the flashlight to narrow in and focus on, in this case, because we're doing the flashlight meditation, breath sensation, but I'm going to give you another option. It doesn't have to be breath sensation. It just simply has to be more of a narrow focus. So you could take the palms of your hands and rest them on the table in front of you. You could stand and use the connection with the soles of the feet and the actual feeling of that. If you have a sound that's in your background, you could use that you're tracking that sound the whole time. So you've narrowed in on that. And each time you see that the mind has wandered, you bring the attention back. Now, the benefit of this is by bringing the wandering mind back over and over again, that in fact is like drops in the bucket of concentration, focus. You are really stabilizing and steadying attention. Every time you see, you release the story and return. So you see that you've gone off, you release, soften the body and return. And that provides some calibration and steadiness for the mind. And that's a wonderful thing, because mindfulness just works better on a steady platform. And so I would say we should go ahead and get started, unless, John, you had something else you wanted to add in.
No, I would love to do some meditating, Tara.
Okay. All right, great. So I'm going to ask folks to either sit or stand, whatever posture feels like it's going to best serve you right now. If at this point in the day you're feeling tired, standing, keeping the eyes open is going to be really helpful. If you're sitting and tired, eyes open, but gaze downward. And it's always an option to keep the eyes open. So whatever feels best for you, eyes open or closed, either standing or sitting. And make some micro movements so that you're holding your body in a way that's upright and engaged, so that the spine is straight but not stiff. And take 2 deep breaths as your own, as a way just to settle in and settle any surface tension from the activity of the day. See if you can make that exhalation longer than the inhalation. So go ahead on your own, do a couple of deep breaths. And then just simply let your natural rhythm resume. And however you're breathing is fine. So it might be rapid or slow or deep. However you're breathing is fine. You don't have to try to do anything special with the breath. Take a moment now. We're just going to kind of scan through the body and soften any areas of holding, just simply to the degree that we can. So kind of starting at the top of the head and bringing the attention down over the face and the jaw, and just softening the neck and the shoulders, sweeping the awareness down over the arms and hands, the torso, the hips and thighs, knees, lower legs, and feet. Just kind of sweeping your awareness through the body, noticing any areas that might be that you might be holding, and soften, but just to the degree that you can. And we'll now kind of use that flashlight analogy to narrow in our focus of attention, to aim and sustain attention on the sensations we're aware of when we breathe. And for everyone, that could be a little different, but where is it most noticeable for you as you inhale and as you exhale? Could be belly, chest, maybe the nostrils, or something else. So tracking the in-breath and tracking the out-breath. Thoughts will come and go as soon as you see it. It's actually a moment of pure awareness. You're now awake, you're aware, you see it. You can release, soften the body, and just simply return attention to breath sensation. It's also fine to use sound if there's a consistent sound that's easier for you today, if the breath is challenging. Also fine to take the palms of your hands and either rest them on your thighs and use the point of contact as your anchor, or a table in front, and what that sensation feels like would be your anchor. So I will be quiet for the next couple to few minutes. Noticing where the mind is, gently releasing the memory or the planning, Notice your whole body. There tends to be a subtle contraction when thought enters. So see if you can soften and then just simply reconnect. Bring that bring that flashlight to highlight either breath sensation or another body sensation or sound. And again, noticing where the mind is, releasing the narrative, softening the body, and returning to your anchor. And as we bring this meditation to a close, may we be peaceful and at ease. May our heart be soft and open. May we be safe and protected, and our bodies healthy and strong. And may the benefit of our practice be for the well-being of ourselves and all people everywhere. And as you feel ready, if your eyes were closed, you can open the eyes. It's sometimes helpful to take just to reorient to the space that you're in, maybe look around a bit, take a little bit of a stretch. I think the thing that I just want to emphasize for folks is that it's very natural for that when we remove all of the things we're distracted by and sit with ourselves in this way, to have the mind just be busy. That's just the nature of it. So just know that you're all doing it correctly. We're not trying to stop thought. We're just simply, as soon as you see that you've gone into a story or memory or planning, you're doing it correctly. All you need to do, because the moment you see it is one where you are now awake and you are aware, you are actually mindful. Just release and then escort your attention back to whatever you're using to help anchor and ground attention. So that could be sensation of breath, it could be sound, it could be another body sensation. Each time you just return, you just keep returning.
Well, Tara, let me ask you a question that I know people might have. Can I first ask you how long that meditation was? I lost track
It
of
was
time a little bit.
exactly 12 minutes, including
Okay.
the closing.
Okay.
I started because I made a note that it was 17 past, and it ended the entire thing right at 29.
So we've been talking about this 12 minute, this magic 12-minute number, but I'm curious, Tara, about your thoughts on, if that seems daunting to folks. Is it okay to start with smaller amounts, and what
Yeah.
is an acceptable smaller amount to start with?
Yeah. So, okay, John, I'm glad you asked that. There's a few things that I would say is, in the beginning of meditation, if you've never meditated, but you're curious and you want to give it a try, I would actually do less than 12. So I think that starting with 3 to 5 minutes a day, just to get some comfort with the discomfort of being with ourselves in this way, because the mind is so busy. So starting with 3 to 5 minutes a day, and, starting with an anchor, I think it's helpful to have something that you're bringing your attention back to over and over again. And that is helping to increase focus and concentration, stabilize attention. Those things in general bring about some ease for the mind and body ultimately. So yeah, so I think it's fine. And what's most important is consistency of practice. I would worry less about time. I'd be more concerned with, all the neuroscientists basically are saying consistency is really important. It's more important than the amount of time. You can build the time, and ultimately the benefit you get is proportional to the time you put in.
And Tara, speaking of consistency, Wendy has asked, when is the best time to meditate?
Yeah. So thanks for that question, Wendy. And that's a popular question. The way that I answer that is that the best time to meditate is the time that's best for you. And I really mean that. So there isn't like a set time. Some people prefer morning, like they roll out of bed before they get consumed with the day. They might even wake up a little bit early if they're going to start a practice, to just begin to build that in. My personal habit is later. So I tend to my practice is usually around 8 o'clock at night. And sometimes I will actually do a little bit in the morning as well. But the thing is, what time of day is going to work best for you in terms of keeping you consistent? So 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes, 5 days a week as a way to start, I think is really good and reasonable. I mean, Amishi's work is pointing to 12 minutes, 5 days a week for 4 weeks. So you can build up to that.
Tara, somebody also asked if there is if this person has, say, just like 1 minute at the beginning of a meeting to introduce people to kind of a centering practice, is there a way that you would recommend doing that to sort of, maybe get a group of people who aren't really meditators, but get them quickly in a centered state of mind at like beginning of a business meeting or something?
Yeah. Wow. I love that question. Again, it's one I've heard before. There's a little bit of caution in it, only in that there may be folks in that meeting who just have zero interest. It's just not at all something that they want to do. And so, I appreciate and accept that that's true. So I think, there's a way to put out there that you'd like to start a meeting with, just a couple of minutes of, in a way, it's like an arrival practice, really. That might be almost even a way to position it as, you're just taking a minute or two to settle in from the last thing and before you move into the next thing, just to get yourself settled in. And, start with the body, maybe do, connecting in with the breath a little bit. But letting folks know that that's something you'd like to build in, and that if anybody wants to opt out, they don't have to do it.
Tara, maybe I can ask you another question of my own, which is, we did what today we did what we refer to sometimes as a formal meditation practice, but I'm wondering if you have any tips about how to bring this practice, which we were calling Find Your Flashlight, bring it into informal settings. So, if you don't have 12 minutes to sit, in your room and meditate, but you're out there in the world, are there ways that you can still bring that sort of focused attention into what you're doing?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, it's so interesting because I was just listening to a Dan Harris podcast. He interviewed Kamala Masters, who's a wonderful teacher. And she was talking about in the 80s, as a young single mother with 3 children, she said to the meditation teacher, like, I just can't do this. I'm a single mother. I have 3. They were really young children. And he said, do you wash dishes? And she said, yes, all the time. So he actually went to her house and really helped her bring the practice of being fully and completely aware as you're washing dishes, feeling the soap and the warmth of the water. And then he said, where in your house are you doing a lot of walking? And she's like, well, from laundry to bedrooms. He's like, okay, great. So then as you're walking, being fully aware of your steps and of the points of contact with the steps and how your body feels. So the idea he told her, and this was just recent, so I love the question. For a number of years, she practiced, what would be called informally. Like you said, we just did a formal practice, which is true. It's like we set aside time. We know we're going to do this thing. This teacher was helping her to integrate this sense of awareness in most things she does, that she does on a regular basis, to be aware of folding clothes, of walking from room to room, of doing dishes. And, it's not, I would say, it's not like we're trying to be completely present all the time we're awake. I think the body could, contract around that and even feel a little bit tense if we thought that's what we had to do. But it was incredibly effective for her. She's a wonderful teacher now. And that was the 80s was a long time ago, but that's how she started.
Or I hear you saying that if anyone wants you to come to their house and show them how to wash dishes mindfully, that you will do it. And I think that's a great offer. As you were talking, I was thinking about, so I'm a person with a 20-month-old son, and which means I don't have a ton of time to formally practice meditation, but I have a lot of time where I'm just sitting there watching him play. And I could certainly be spending that time thinking about like the meetings I'm supposed to be attending or whatever. But instead, I really try to focus on just observing him. And when you are watching a child very closely, you can sort of see experience moving through them. And so I try to focus on what is his face doing? What are his eyes doing? Like, how is he engaging?
That's great, John. Yeah, that's great. And he probably knows when you're not attending.
He does. I've told this story to other people where if he's playing and I'm sort of sitting next to him and he's doing his thing, and I like take my phone out to look at it, by the time I look back up, he's just staring at me like, what's up? Why did you stop paying attention?
Yes.
So it's a good
Yeah.
reality check.
It is a good one. I mean, we feel it when, and again, I think, these informal and formal practices matter, because then the idea is that we're employing this steadiness and this understanding of how the mind works into our daily life, into how we drive and into how we engage. Yeah.
Well, Tara, so we're talking about shorter bouts of meditation, shorter than 12 minutes. And so I thought I would
Yep.
just mention to folks that we do have this wonderful SoundCloud page, soundcloud.com/mind the moment, where we have a bunch of meditations led by Tara and other members of our teaching team that are fewer than 12 minutes. There's some that are longer than 12 minutes, but you can find 3-minute, 5-minute, 7-minute, 10-minute meditations. This could be a good way to just get yourself, revved up for these, for the Peak Mind Challenge, where we'll be focusing on 12-minute meditations.
I want to just thank you so much for joining. This was a delight to do. And John, so nice to be back on the stage with you. Yeah, and I, would just say, be patient with yourself, be kind. That this practice is simple, but it's not easy. The benefit is that we are learning about the nature of our minds, how our minds work, what we're drawn to, what we push away. We're learning to develop some equanimity, some balance of mind and heart in these practices. And you don't have to feel all of that right away. It just comes, the idea is that there has to be some degree of trust and patience that this practice is doing its work. Yeah.